You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
As the restoration process begins at CDK Global, what could these cyber attacks mean for the industry moving forward? Steve Greenfield, the CEO and founder of Automotive Ventures and host of the Future of Automotive right here in the CBT Automotive Network, joins us right now to give us his perspective. Steve, what say you about all of this craziness out there? I mean, you're smack dab in the middle of all things technology for the auto industry. So thank you first and foremost for taking the time into your schedule. But what's your take on this?
Well, Jim, it's good to be here. I think you're in my seat. So, I mean, I'm going to come up
right.
there Thursday.
This
get my
is
seat
your
back.
background.
No, I think it's very sad. I mean, any way you look at it, it's sad, maybe inevitable with the claims these hackers have had, these international hackers have had against really big corporations recently with MGM and United Health and Caesars, et cetera. Maybe it was just a matter of time before they focused their gaze on automotive, which is, the biggest retail vertical in the US. But I mean, wow, if nothing else, it's identified, as you and I were discussing earlier, it's identified just how mission critical the DMS is to this big shopping vertical. And I mean, I think it was just a matter of time. And, the collateral damage, it's going to take months for this to work out. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing. There's going to be, lawsuits, I'm certain, from some dealer groups. There's going to be, class action lawsuits from consumers. And any plans that shame on, because I know a lot of the executives there, but any plans that CDK had in either IPOing soon or, selling the company soon, all of this is going to have to get worked out. And the dust is going to have to settle, and this could take months or years.
Oh, the contingent liability on this, like you just said, could go on for years. I mean, there's already attorneys out there that are claiming, if you've been hurt, or maybe we can put together a class action lawsuit against dealers or, the provider here. In this case, it's CDK. But so there's going to be a lot of fallout from this.
Entirely, totally agree. Sure. I mean, the other big players, the Reynolds, the Coxes, and the Techion to some degree, they must be really thinking that they were not the targets. I mean, obviously these hackers are smart folks, and they go after the biggest player. In this case, it's CDK with the deepest pockets that has the most exposure with 15,000 plus dealers. But I mean, these folks for sure are in war rooms, in their boardrooms, over the weekend, figuring out sort of like how much risk do we have?
That's right.
And making sure that they're providing remedies very, very quickly because it could have been anyone.
Yeah. From your perspective, and you've been on all sides of this industry, what should dealers be doing right now, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen the resolve to get back to work, right? We've seen even today, many of the public say, we're back selling cars. I mean, clearly they're going to have a blip on volume, and they're going to have a blip on probably both front and back end grosses. I can't imagine that they're as effectively attaching F&I products, for example, during all of this. So there will be a big gap in their financials for at least, a few weeks, if not a month. I think we're going to see, interestingly, the SAR is going to be down this month, which is going to be amazing to see because of one vendor's attack. The SAR for new cars will be down. How much it's down, I don't know, but definitely we've heard stories, as I'm sure you more than me, of certain dealers just closing for business. They're like, we don't know what to do. We're going to have the employees come in to clean up things around the office, but we aren't selling cars and we're turning consumers away at the door. So there are going to be fewer new cars sold this month. But I think that, the dealers out there are being very creative. Some are going back to Excel spreadsheets, and that's going to have its own issues because you're going to have to then play catch up when finally the DMS is back online, and you're going to have to input all this data, and hopefully CDK can help with that. But I think it's dealers, if nothing else, over my 25-year career, have proven to have tremendous resolve. Right, nothing will affect them. So I think that the creative ones out there have figured out a way to bridge the gap and get back to selling.
That's right. You had mentioned before we got recording here that you knew of an auto group that was literally losing millions of dollars every day, or every hour for that matter, right?
Every hour in terms of lost sales, while they were down, which is really sad. So there's going to be somebody, they're going to be hitting either insurance claims for that, or there's going to be a lot of finger pointing. And I don't know how the dust is going to settle on these lost sales.
Sure. Do you think we'll see more of these attacks now that this has happened in the automotive space?
Well, it's interesting that, I think back, showing my age here, Jim, but I think back to the early 70s when the Israelis basically told terrorists, like, we do not negotiate. And to underscore that, they would storm a jumbo jet.
Yeah.
The terrorists had had landed and taken over and landed,
Sure.
even if it meant, Israeli citizens were killed in the process.
Yeah.
And I think that I have mixed feelings here, right? In some ways, it would be nice to have the luxury to say we don't negotiate and just deal with it. But when you've got 15,000 plus dealers waiting for you to get back online so they can get back to business, it's got to be really, really tempting just to pay them off, et cetera. But it sets a bad precedent. And I do think, like I said earlier, whether I'm Cox or Reynolds or Techion, I've got to be looking at this and saying, there's pros and cons to paying this off and getting it swept under the rug really quickly.
Yeah.
Hopefully, 9 months from now, we just have this like memory, like, oh yeah, that happened earlier this year. When we're recapping the year at the end of the year. But I think at the same time, it does set precedent. I think if nothing else, the hackers now know that there are well-heeled, deep-pocketed folks within the industry that could be targets.
Right.
And I think that everybody now has got a target on their back.
There's no question. What do you think this means for the overall industry moving forward?
Well, I just think a lot more caution. I think if CDK was, like I said, planning on exiting anytime soon, this is going to slow down that path.
Yeah.
I think that anyone who's looking at the valuations for any software company in automotive now is going to have this front and center in their mind to say, what's your cybersecurity risk?
Sure.
What's the profile and how are you mitigating against that? I don't know if it's going to manifest in lower multiples for companies being paid, but I think if nothing else, it's going to give a bunch of people pause for concern. I mean, it's one thing, when you're covering this kind of news on CBT News, but when it's in the mainstream media and over the weekend, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, et cetera, are covering this. It's not or CNBC, not a good thing, right? Not a good thing for the industry. It's attention that we just don't need, and especially the software companies just don't need. So there will be longer term implications from all this. But like I said, hopefully it gets resolved quickly. Hopefully the other players up their game in terms of protections against cyber attacks, and then there isn't another incidents, and we can move on as an industry, and it becomes a bad memory, but a distant memory.
That's right. That's right. I'm watching even some of the local news jumped on this for obvious reasons. They're going into their clients and car dealerships and what have you. But the way that they're positioning it is to say that thousands of dealers all over America are shut down. They can't sell any cars. Well, that's true to an extent, but then there's also thousands that are doing business as usual because maybe they were not a CDK, client. And but it's got an impact, to your point, on the overall industry. Now with the consumers that are out there saying, "Oh, wait a minute, don't go to a car dealership anytime soon because they're shut down because of this," right? It's crazy.
It's a great point. What I hadn't thought until you just introduced it is like, those dealers that are on Reynolds or Dealer Track right now are definitely making hay. I'm certain it'll be interesting to see if we get any stats out about this month and how much incremental market share they were able to take.
That's right.
Because the CDK dealer across the street was forced to shut down and or run like sort of suboptimally on spreadsheets. And I think it'll be interesting to hear those stories as they come out.
Yeah.
Whether there are dealers out there that are really capitalizing on this and aggressively taking market share. I don't think that will last long term as the competitors get back on.
Yeah.
But in the short term, I mean, the pain of the neighbor could be the gain for the guy who isn't on CDK.
That's right. That's right. And we all know that if you were to change providers, although that sounds maybe tempting during a time like this, it could happen to your provider that you've changed to, right? There's no surefire, answer to that, right?
Anyone could be at risk. And I think that the other providers out there have to have sympathy for the fact that CDK is going through all of this because, the target's on everybody's back and it could have been anyone. Yeah, for sure. No question. It's an incredible story to follow. We're going to be doing a lot of coverage all this week, and I appreciate all the time you've given us, but we figured you were just the guy because you are knee deep in all of this technology, which, by the way, are you on the phone with all of your technology companies that you're investing in saying, hey, are we good? Are we covering everything that we need to? Well, it is interesting. Another story is many of these companies have these integrations with CDK, right?
Yeah.
So, you've got a software provider and there's a 50% chance that dealer customer is on CDK, and all those integrations have gone dark as well. So many of the software providers out there whose customers are on CDK have had to figure out workarounds as well.
Yeah.
So there's also pain being inflicted on the secondary market, which is all the software providers that integrate into CDK.
That's right. Very good point. Very good point. Steve Greenfield, just the man we needed at a time like this. So CEO and founder of Automotive Ventures, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim, and don't get used to that chair because I'll be there in a couple of days.
It's all yours every Friday. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.